In this episode, I speak with Alyssa Stone, the owner and music therapist of Dynamic Lynks, and the neuroaffirming techniques that they use with autistic individuals and neurodivergent individuals in their practice. In this episode, there's some background noises, some are animals, some are bumps and thumps. I did my best to kind of edit out what I could or reduce the noise of what I could, but I did have to record in my closet for this episode, so this is the nature of telehealth sometimes and working at home and with other people. So I apologize in advance if there's any extra noises that are distracting in this conversation, but otherwise it is amazing and I'm so excited for you to hear what Alyssa shares. Before this awesome conversation, we're actually going to hear a sponsorship from Alyssa Stone and Dynamic Lynks about their dynamic community. And we'll also hear from our other sponsor, Anchor, the host of the podcast.
At Dynamic Lynks, we are passionate about serving neurodiverse individuals in an inclusive and affirming way. And we want to help you do the same with the launch of our Dynamic Community. Our Dynamic Community is a monthly subscription program where you get easy-to-use session plans with 5 original songs and activities delivered directly to your inbox every month. On top of all those goodies in the session plan, you also get 1 hour of group supervision each month and a 15-minute mini lecture on a teaching topic to support your neurodiverse clients. The theme for each month is based around that topic, full of original songs, music and movement activities, visual supports, and more.
Ready to join? Visit dynamiclinks.com/community to sign up today.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Navigating Adulthood and IDD. Today I'm joined by Alyssa Stone of Dynamic Lynks. Welcome.
Thank you.
And her puppy Ray.
Yes, she's here, so if you hear barks, I apologize in advance. She's looking all cute.
It's all good, and as hopefully listeners know, Queenie can maybe show up at any time. And sometimes that can derail conversation, but we'll see. You never know what she's up to.
We'll roll with the pet love.
Exactly.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, to start, would you mind giving us a short introduction of yourself?
Sure. So I'm Alyssa. Hello. I'm waving, but you can't see me. I am a board-certified music therapist. I'm also a neurologic music therapist, and on a completely different side of the spectrum, a certified yoga teacher. So I kind of do a lot of different things incorporated in my practice. I run a private music therapy practice in the greater Chicago area called Dynamic Lynks. Feel free to check us out, dynamiclinks.com, at Dynamic Lynks on Instagram. Just plugging myself now. I'm sure it'll happen later too. I specialize in working with individuals with developmental differences, neurodivergent individuals, autistic individuals, and those struggling with some mental health needs. Within our practice, we have a team of 3 therapists right now and an intern, and they all specialize in a little bit of different things. We predominantly serve ages 3 to 18 in our clinic space, but the highest number of our contracts are adult day programs and adult day services. And everyone who comes to work for us is like, I didn't think I'd like working with adults so much. And I just am like, yes, it's the best. It's the greatest. It's so much fun, skill work, relationship building. And you have that maturity level of being on the same page with another grown-up, which is really nice sometimes.
Oh, for sure.
Yes.
Yes, I can relate to that. And I feel like I kind of had a similar maybe experience when I my first time working with adults with disabilities was a practicum in undergrad. And it's not like I expected to dislike any of the populations I worked with.
Yes.
But I think I was surprised at how much I enjoyed working with them. And maybe it's that like you were saying, that connection of like, oh, I don't have to like put on like a show almost with kids.
Yes.
Sometimes you got to pull out all the bells and whistles. It's like I can just be myself, make music, and connect with them on this, more adult level.
Absolutely. My first practicum was also with adults with developmental differences when I was in my undergrad first ever practicum, and I wasn't sure what to expect. And the clinician there, Jessica Baldwin, which she might have a different last name now. Jessica, if you're listening, hello, and I'm sorry if I messed up your name, but she ran just a really incredible program. And coming from an NMT teaching style in my undergrad program, it was interesting to see how she supported and interacted with those individuals. That wasn't so much those clinical protocols, but really fostering social emotional development through comprehensive projects and interactive programming and music making, just so many cool things she was doing. So that stuck with me for a long time.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's dig into the day programs. So what does your work with Dynamic Lynks and those day programs look like?
Sure. So here in Illinois, we're actually very unique. So Greater Chicago area, Illinois, it's very unique because we have park districts, which I think every state has parks and park districts. But what that looks like here is so different than the park districts I grew up with. The park districts provide classes, organized events, so many different things across the spectrum of childhood, adulthood, aging, older adulthood. And within the park districts here in Illinois, every town has their park district, but there's also special recreation associations for every town or group of towns. So a lot are kind of in a co-op or a community of special rec associations, oversees 5 to 14 counties. So it'll serve a lot of people, but it's unique to Illinois in that there's a special recreation association linked with almost every park district. And it provides programming just for individuals with additional needs or differences or exceptionalities. And they have programming for 0 through the lifespan. And a lot of them have adult day programs, right? Isn't that so cool? Shouldn't everywhere have this?
Yeah, I'm wondering if Colorado has something like that associated, but not that I know of, like with the park districts. There's some cool day programs in the area, but they're like their own nonprofits.
Yep. And these are taxpayer dollars and then oftentimes nonprofit on top of that. So they get funding from galas and fundraisers, but they're also getting taxpayer dollars. So they're able to sustain programs over time, which is wonderful. Yeah. And they're able to reach so many people that maybe don't quite fit into like a true day program or a residential program, but just need a little bit of support when working on these skills or interactions. And what's unique to Illinois too is that we were talking earlier before we got on the call, everyone, before we hit record, we were talking about recreation therapists. And here in Illinois, to be part of an SRA, you actually have to be a certified therapeutic recreation specialist, CTRS or CPRP. That has a different words to it. I'm not certain on the acronym. We could look that up. We could add that in post if you want. So CTRSs run these programs. So it's being led by people who are having the same skills in mind of what is this recreational experience creating for the human in front of me and how is it positively impacting their life. Now within music therapy, my goals tend to be a little more in clinical domains as well as social emotional in my private practice work. But in the recreation setting, it's very social emotional based on what kind of social experience are they having, creating meaningful friendships, sustaining those, wellness, health. A lot of these programs run with Special Olympics. So all that being said, they pull us in because they say, hey, we're doing a lot of sports, but we also want to do a lot of music. Music has all this power and capability to connect us. So they have us come in for contracts. So we contract with 5 different adult day programs within different special recreation associations, which serve dozens of counties. So we're seeing, clients from all over Western, Northern, Southwestern Illinois, Chicago area, not like Peoria or Bloomington Normal. We're not going that far. And they call us in for services, 1 hour a week, or we might go to different sites. So we might see the same, program at 3 different sites. And we go in and we do music making with them. And we do drumming, songwriting, movement. We've made music videos, all sorts of cool stuff to work on. We mainly focus on autonomy and independence, communication, and then socialization. So it's really fun. I'm happy to talk more about what those specifics look like.
Yeah, I would love to dive into that. And I love how you have those goals of independence and autonomy kind of above others, because I know sometimes with music therapy, sometimes goals can be academic, which at this point we're all out of school.
Right. I mean, you have to think of what is the functional transfer of this skill. If it can't transfer to 2 real world applications, why am I working on it? And what I've found is so often in adult programming across the board, right? Whether that's adults with IDD, DD, or older adults, we spend so much time infantilizing the people in front of us, and it drives me crazy because they're adults. If someone came up to you and was like, "Do you want some juice?" You'd be like, "No, I don't want the juice, thanks, that's okay." But if you say like, "Oh, it looks like you're thirsty, would you like grape or apple?" And giving autonomy and giving just even a small window of independence is really critical and important. And a lot of these participants in the program are very capable. I want to be careful with my words because I don't love putting functioning labels on people, but highly capable individuals who just don't have that small amount of support in the community to thrive the way they could. So they come in and they want to talk. They want to sing their favorite song. They want to talk about their group home or their work. So we create a safe space to do that through the music and give them independence, autonomy, social connection, self-regulation, emotional expression, all the good stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
Oh, I love that. And I love that space that you guys are creating in those day programs. It sounds like a lot of fun, too.
It is, and we haven't seen as many in COVID, but we're starting to get back. We're going to come in virtually. Yes, they're meeting, they're trying to pull us in. So funding is always hard.
Right, yeah.
Funding's always hard. So
that happened with me in my day programs too. It's like they pretty much, we had to stop just when the pandemic started because of funding, and it's like things are slowly starting to kind of get back now, which is nice. But it's been hard. It's been hard for those groups to support adults with disabilities during this time too. Yeah.
We serve one program that we are relaunching with in like a big way. I can't talk too much about it because the nitty gritty is not detailed out, but they serve more medically fragile adults with disabilities, and they are completely shut down, obviously for safety reasons, and they won't be resuming until everyone can be vaccinated, I would assume. So it may be some time. It may be May 1st. I don't know. Saw that news yesterday. Ooh, we're dating this, I guess, by saying that. But yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see when they reopen. But that program, also what we've noticed, and I want to be careful with my words, the retention of employees is so hard of the caregivers and the assistants in those locations. Right. So what we saw a lot of time coming in is people who didn't know what to do, and it wasn't necessarily a fault of theirs. Those programs don't have the capability to train someone new every week for hours and hours. They don't have the funding, they don't have the time, they don't have the resources. So when we were going in, we were bringing in visual supports that they had never seen before. We were bringing in activities and ideas that they had never thought of before. And I think the power that we can bring to educate in a space that's fun and doesn't feel like a lecture is really important too, of modeling the levels of interaction, modeling what we expect of the participants and the staff can be really helpful for all those programs. And that helped us create a really strong relationship with them because they saw not only the benefit for the participants, but the benefit for the staff to learn new ways of interacting and learning from us on ways to help them. So that was a really cool side thing that came out of doing what we're doing.
Yeah, definitely. That's so cool. That kind of staff education aspect of it too, that they can really take away from it.
Yeah, and it's, I know,
right. The turnover, man.
And they work hard, and it's a hard job, and I'm not sure I'd want to do that job every day. It is a challenge to manage a lot of participants with not a lot of money and not a lot of resources. Yeah, I'm not sure I'd be like, yeah, let me sign up for that. So I get it. I get why there's turnover.
Yeah, definitely. And I just want to say, if just in case it's picking up on the mic, I think we can hear Ray snoring.
Snoring? Yes, you can.
There's this like Darth Vader kind of sound in the background, so I think that's what that is.
Oh, that's
Which
hilarious.
Is all good. Now we have that interaction we were hoping for.
Yes, I'm sorry, everyone listening. Yep, she is snoring.
She's sleepy.
She is sleeping. She is 8 years old. She snores nice and loud. I'll just nudge her if she gets too loud. Sometimes it's full.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yep, which not really ASMR at that point.
Yeah.
Yes.
A little too loud. That's so funny.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, I feel like you were kind of hinting at this with maybe some of the staff education. We've discussed before that you use neuro-affirming techniques at Dynamic Lynks. And I would love if you could first define that for some
Sure.
of our listeners, just in case they're not quite sure what neuroaffirming means. And then, yeah, we can dive into it, because I suspect that might be some of the, some of that support for the staff is exploring those kind of techniques.
100%. Bonnie, you know me well. So neurofirming, I think the best way to define it, there's not one definition of it, but really respecting the personhood of the neurodivergent individual in front of you. So that could be developmental disabilities, could be developmental differences, autism, ADHD, twice exceptional. Neurodivergencies kind of fit a large category. Mostly they're referring to brain differences, neural differences. Neuroaffirming techniques are just saying there's nothing quote unquote, because you can't see my fingers, wrong with you. We're not trying to quote unquote treat you. We're trying to support you in your goals and help you reach your fullest potential on your terms. So we're affirming your neural differences, and we're not trying to change or shape you into one specific box. We're just trying to help your box kind of fit in with all the other boxes, if that makes sense. I'm not trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. I'm trying to make everything else a little rounder for you, too, while helping you fit wherever you want to fit. So that's kind of the basis of neuroaffirming, neuro-inclusive, just being mindful that every person's different and we're not necessarily treating them, we're supporting them while respecting their neural differences and their neurodivergencies. And in some of these settings, that can look really different and be challenging depending on the levels of communication of the individuals, the levels of mobility, the levels of independence. In that group home I was speaking about most recently, the levels of independence are really low. Many of them are mobility device bound, they're non-speaking, they need support to feed and change themselves. So neuroaffirming techniques there are going to look a little different than with speaking individuals with autism who are engaging in social interactions with peers and showing higher levels of independence and communication. Again, functioning level doesn't represent the internal competence or ability of the individual. It's just the way they're presenting to you. So affirming everyone where they are. And that, really went into staff education of some of these places. I think presuming competence is still a first step that they're working on, of the individual in front of you is a sentient, competent being, giving them as many opportunities to express themselves on their terms. Well, that's how you can be affirming and inclusive to who they are. If someone's non-speaking, continually asking them questions that they're not responding to, that's just silly. You're fitting a square peg into a round hole. Presenting more visual choices. Presenting 2 tambourines and having them choose which tambourine. I mean, any way you can throw in the option for them to communicate and them to be autonomous, I think is really important and can be really affirming. And we brought a lot of that into the staff training on how can they just access the individual in front of them in a different format than they may have been thinking of before. And music, of course, is, the most powerful medium, I think, to do that, because it doesn't require words. You have inherent visuals, and we have all this auditory priming and prosody and inherent cueing to the music. The reactions that program saw in our groups was beyond anything they had ever seen before, which was shocking to me because I think we weren't necessarily reinventing the wheel. We were just doing the best with the wheel we had. But then they just wanted more because they saw clients who were speaking that never made a sound before. Now, they weren't saying like, "Hi, Alyssa, how are you today?" But they were vocalizing meaningfully. Right. They were trying to functionally communicate in different ways. They were engaging for 30 to 45 minutes, whereas they didn't engage for 5 previously. So just really interesting results from that program. I'm excited for the launch of what we've got coming next with them.
Yay!
Yeah, stay tuned.
Yeah. It sounds like, even to me and in my experience too, it's like that application of giving space to our clients, because I feel like that's what happens when people aren't presuming competence, is they'll ask them the same thing over and over and over and trying to get a response, but then you're interrupting processing time. They're not having that space. Or the therapist prompts the client to play the drum, and the staff person takes their hand and hits the drum as fast as possible. You're like, whoa, what?
Whoa, buddy, whoa.
It's just that space. It's oh, they could probably play this, on their own. Maybe we need to figure out if it's with their elbow, maybe, or their fingertips, or maybe we need to change where the drum is. But it's like, it's almost like they're not presuming competence, and they want them to be like immediately competent at everything. Right. And it's like, whoa, music, this isn't even about the result. This is
nope. I could care less if we hit the drum.
Right, exactly. It's about, presenting them the opportunity, giving them choices, just making music together. But so many times I'll see staff members, and and they're well-meaning, but they're just like wanting to kind of control it all too, and it's like, breathe, give them some space. This is fun, this is, and I think there's so much in working with even individuals with disabilities, from kids to adulthood. There's that really product-based, goal-based response that people want, for even in academic skills or whatever. And so you get to adults and you can see that that's still that kind of there. They're like, oh, let's make sure this happens. And it's like, whoa, no, let's just we're just here to have some fun and make some music.
Right. It's not about getting it right. It's about getting to that is really what's getting it right. It's about the journey and not the destination in that instance. And I think educating the staff on that I don't need them to shake and stop with me. I want to see how they shake and stop so I can know their level of regulation, level of their psychomotor regulation, to see what that processing speed is. That's one of the first assessments we always do, is how long does it take for you to respond to that cue, timed with music and giving that auditory priming, because that sets us up to know what's your processing time. Because if it took you 8 beats of music to stop, or 8 beats of music to start your motor movement, acknowledging that there's not additional motor needs, right? But someone who can complete that motor movement just needs time. I can assess how long, okay, so 8 beats at a tempo of 90 beats per minute, that's how long it's going to take you to respond to a question of, if I say, what color do you want? I got to go, and then anticipating a response. I like to give it 4 extra beats, and then if they don't respond, then I'll ask again and maybe give a stronger motor cue. But giving time and space for someone to respond. They're thinking, they're motor planning, they're doing a lot of work there. Give them a chance.
Right. And I would suspect that's one reason. Well, one, music's motivating. 2, you guys are probably providing high quality services. But I suspect it's also so. It's also that simple too. It's probably in other areas people are just like, why aren't they responding? Where you are counting in your head because you've done that assessment to let them process,
Yep. I'm always thinking, okay, how long is it taking you to respond? How are you presenting today, right? Is your body moving fast? Oh, your brain might be moving fast. Maybe I need to increase this tempo to access it more effectively. I'm always looking at the person in front of me and thinking, how can I adapt some of my things to help you? Because in turn, then I can help you help yourself. If I can figure out what's your internal metronome look like, right? Assess that baseline of what's their typical tempo range look like? What's their processing speed look like? I can give you that information to anyone and say, okay, put a metronome on, prime them for this many beats, wait this long before you ask another question, and keep the metronome going to help them answer. And then they can take that functional tool with them. I don't own the rights to the metronome as a music therapist. Obviously, I'm going to implement the protocol hopefully more effectively than they are, because I have years of training in different music therapy techniques. But I can at least help a little bit to say, okay, just put this on and give him 8 beats, or give her 8 beats to respond. Yeah. And I do that with my clients too, for themselves, to help them get themselves going, of tap yourself, help yourself get those words out. If you want to say it, give yourself more tools to help you say it when there's motor planning needs or processing needs. And that's been a game changer for a lot of my clients on their independence.
Right. And giving them the tools too, or even helping them advocate, give me time to process.
Yep. And that's what's hard. I don't know if you want to go down this rabbit hole. Let me know if you want to cut this out. It's what's hard sometimes working with other clinicians. I'll be general with it. Other clinicians who are very program based, that are looking at fading prompt levels to nothing. Whereas sometimes we need that prompt. I have a calendar app on my phone. If I didn't have this in my schedule for today, that I'm meeting with Bonnie at 1 p.m. Central Time, I would have missed the meeting because I need that prompt. It pops up on my phone 10 minutes before the event to remind me. It makes sure I'm there. It has the link to where I need to go. All of this is executive functioning and planning. So I independently did that, but I still need that prompt. I have my Waze app set for when I have to go to a client's house. So it tells me when I need to leave. So I don't have to look it up. I mean, we have these inherent prompts in our lives. It's okay if a client needs a little support to increase their level of independence. I would rather have someone walking around with a metronome in their Bluetooth earbud on one ear that no one else can hear. It's of no bother to anyone. If that's going to help them organize, plan, communicate more effectively, and train to the rhythm so they can have a more steady gait and have a safer interaction with the world, I'm not taking away that prompt. I'm not fading that to nothing. Like, if that's what they need for forever, okay. Like, great.
Yeah, what a good point. I don't know if I've really thought about prompts that way, like specifically. Like, it's so true. Like, we have prompts in our own lives, and it's unrealistic to kind of work everybody to like this perfect box of, well, you never need prompts to be successful in things. And I was even just talking about, I think with my husband, I was talking about how I have some new ukulele students, and I mailed them stickers to put on the ukulele, and I was like, we could technically learn this ukulele without the stickers, probably, but I sensed some anxiety with learning with some of the students, and I was like, why not send like this extra visual prompt that's just going to make it easier to be successful? I have stickers on mine, so they see that on mine, so it's like, why not just send the stickers, and we can talk later if they want to keep them on. But as far as like learning, and I was thinking like even like middle schoolers write all their notes in, like in the music.
Yep.
And you don't see that as like why don't you guys just know how to read treble clef?
Right. Oh, here's this brand new thing.
Right. It's like, and it's going to be up to the individual whether they want to keep the stickers on or take them off later. But I'm not going to be like one day, okay, let's take off the stickers because
they must be removed right now.
Removed. If they express they're ready, then yeah, cool. But if they like the stickers, cool. It's totally up to them at the end of the day.
And you can reflect on them, what you're seeing, right? Just like we do in therapy. I know it's just ukulele lessons. We can be like, doesn't look like you really need that sticker for A minor anymore. I think we could take that one off. How do you feel about that? And then they'll either say, yeah, let's try it, or no, I'm not quite there yet.
They might like the stickers.
Exactly. And if they're going to become professional ukulele players, then like, okay, in a couple years, maybe we'll work to pull that off and start to build that. But even then, who cares? If you're a professional ukulele player, they may just be there to look pretty at that point because you've got the motor plan memorized.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good point. It's like, prompts, it's up to whoever you're working with. Do they want that prompt ongoing, right? Or like, are they ready to not have it? And it's just up to them, because it'd be the same with you if you were like, I don't feel like I need this reminder on my phone anymore, right? But you kind of know yourself too, and you're like, I'm going to forget. I'm a busy person. I should probably have the reminder. And it's up to you at the end of the day whether or not you have that prompt. So I think it's really interesting way to think about prompting. Is kind of like, it's up to the individual at the end of the day whether they want to have that or not, and it just depends on their support level. Absolutely. Where they're at in life, what they what makes them comfortable.
Yeah,
there's no reason to play ukulele uncomfortably.
Right, exactly. Make it fun. And I feel like we get stuck on the term prompt dependence. And I think a better way to look at it is learned helplessness. I don't want someone to have learned helplessness. I don't want them to be relying on me for something they can totally do on their own. That is not the end goal. So then we'd really have to look at that. But if it's depending on something that just makes life easier and better for you, well, that's not learned helplessness. That's executive functioning and planning and organizing what you need to set yourself up for success, which I think is a more important overarching skill for overall autonomy, independence, success through adulthood, success across the lifespan. Some of these clinicians that make these programs with the faded prompts, they do the program for several weeks and then they move on to another one that are building on each other, but along the way something gets lost or not inherently retained, and then what do? Like, you faded all the prompts and now we don't know it. And now we're just kind of stuck. And everybody's going, well, why don't you know this? You worked on this for 3 weeks. And it's like, well, maybe there's a deeper skill there that we need to be looking at the overarching umbrella.
Right.
Yeah.
Just because you master anything in 3 weeks doesn't mean that might retain. I can learn a piece of music and forget that 3 weeks later.
Exactly. Right. What really gets us from short-term working memory to long-term memory is more the acquisition in daily life and the application of that.
Right. And I loved how you kind of also distinguished learned helplessness from kind of what we're talking about too. I think that's important. And learned helplessness is more back to our earlier example of playing the drum for somebody.
Yep.
That would be learned helplessness. Where kind of a prompt, maybe prompt's not even the right word at some points. Maybe it's more like adaptation.
Yeah.
Could be having the drum on a stand at a certain angle, and that might not change because that might just be physically a support that an individual needs. So I think that's a good way to think of it, where it's like that prompting, that support is more like that, and then learned helplessness is like when you aren't giving them the space. I hate a hand over hand. I will stand by that. That might be a hot
Body
take.
will make concrete statements here. I'm being ambiguous.
That might be a hot take, but you know what? Any family that that I'm working with, I want them to know, like, I'm not going to be doing hand over hand in most situations unless absolutely necessary.
Yep. I fully agree. And also because we have alternative routes to that destination. So if I'm thinking, like, I have a client right now who's working on bilateral hand coordination and alternating hands to get the neural wires firing in the brain a little differently. It's not so much that his hands will alternate on a drum, because there's another therapist there when I treat him and I'm like, I don't think you quite understand what I'm trying to do here, but it's cool. Just let me do my thing. And we were doing hand under hand, I guess is the way to put it, where, like, I often, if I'm leaning towards hand over hand, I put my hands out and allow my clients to touch my hands and then let them move me, and then I kind of move them back to give also that opportunity for consent, because whether someone's speaking or non-speaking, we have to provide that consent to touch their body in their space. You don't want a stranger walking up to you and, like, touching your shoulders and touching your body, like, always asking for consent in an appropriate way for the individual in front of you. So I do hand under hand, maybe. I'm going to coin that as a new thing.
Yeah.
So the client was pushing my hands down and I was kind of like pushing him back up to get that, showing him that rhythm pattern. But all that did, and as hand over hand, the evidence shows us, it taught him how to move his hands with my hands. It didn't teach him to alternate. It wasn't sending those neural connections. I was like, okay, maybe we're tapping into mirror neurons. No, it didn't transfer for him. So what we changed to is more like a therapeutic instrumental music play where he's alternating on the drum, but I'm holding a tambourine over the hand I want to hit. So he's going up, down, with the different hands, tambourine, drum, and I'm giving those clear cues. And now, after a couple months of working on this, not even months, maybe it was like weeks, we are alternating for a duration of 10 to 30 seconds. It does oscillate completely independently, just mimicking me. So we faded all the way back to that first prompt level, and we didn't even need hand over hand.
Right.
So, yep. I think the instance is different for every person. For clients who I do like more adaptive piano music therapy hybrid lessons, I might support the wrist because they just don't have the motor plan or they're not sure which finger goes where. So I'll touch their finger and say this finger. And if they can't get it down, then I'll be like this finger. But that's it. It's just to prompt the movement, and then I immediately pull away as much as I can. Because again, they'll never learn that motor plan if I'm doing it for them.
Right. Yeah, I feel like it's very similar for me too. It's like ukulele, if we're in person, and I would ask, for consent, and then I might, help them find that fingering on the ukulele. But that's not how we're going to do it every time.
No, you got to do it on your own. And if you can't, then we'll figure out something else.
Right.
But, what's the point of me playing it for you? If your goal is to learn ukulele, well then me playing it for you doesn't get you where you want to be at all. Right. It gets you to where I want to be.
Right. And I mean, back to the drumming example in like a music therapy group, that, those individuals aren't even necessarily like, I'm trying to learn how to drum. They're just there to make music. And it's still that same instance where people will very often like grab hands and play for them. And it depends, like we've been talking about too, because sometimes for sensory that might be necessary. Again, consent is huge. But on, and other times it's just giving them space because they might be able to play it, presuming that competence in their own way, and it might look different than somebody else hitting the drum, but that's okay. But if you don't give them that opportunity, they're going to learn. I play the drum by waiting for somebody to grab my hand and playing the drum. That's the learned helplessness.
Yep. And I think it's on us, which is sad, but also why they're paying us and why we're there and why we can ask for, the hourly rate that we can, is it's on us to set the expectations for the staff in the room of what we want in our session, of help the individuals. You know them best, most likely, because you're with them day to day, but I want you to give everybody 10 seconds to do whatever we're doing. Or let's try no support for this activity because I just want them to have fun playing the drum. And if they can, cool. If they don't want to, cool. Right now, we're just trying to engage everybody playing together. And it can be frustrating. And I think at some locations that dynamic was hard because they're like, who are you coming in? You come in 1 hour per month, and who are you to tell us how to do our job? But in that hour per month, you are the authority in the room, and maybe they'll learn something from the role you're setting for them, or the example you're setting for them. There you go.
All right. How can other music therapists and professionals learn more about using neuroaffirming techniques?
Oh, great question, Bonnie. Great question. I think first and foremost, before I plug what we can do to help you, is go listen to neurodivergent voices and autistic voices. If you're not already following people on Instagram and Facebook who identify as a member of these different quote unquote clinical populations, go really listen and hear what they have to say. That's where I've learned so much as a therapist on how I can better serve the community that I'm really interested in serving. Some great Facebook groups, if you're open to that. Facebook groups can be hit or miss because everyone has their own opinions, but there's a group for neuroaffirming therapists on there, which is where I first learned about this term. There's a group called Ask Me, I'm Autistic, where only autistic individuals can respond in the first 24 hours. There's a group called Ask Me, I'm an AAC user, and those are for individuals who are using assistive, alternative, augmentative communication devices, and only they can respond in the first 24 hours. And it's just really interesting to see the perspectives of voices that maybe weren't listened to for so long. So first and foremost, I recommend doing that if you're looking at how to incorporate this in your practice. Beyond that, if you've looked and you're like, okay, I think I get it, but I need to do more, we just launched at Dynamic Lynks our Dynamic Community, which is a monthly subscription service that gives you neuro-affirming and neuro-inclusive techniques every month with 5 original songs and activities, original song recordings, chord sheets, lyrics, facilitation guides, and then also a lecture on like a teaching topic each month. So I talked about a lot of the things that will be in. We've already planned out the first 18 months of the community because there's just so much we want to help people learn. But talking about celebrating neurodiversity, how to structure your session for the best amount of success, psychomotor regulation, which we've talked about in here, and how to assess processing speed and support the person in front of you a little more effectively. All of that's in there. So registration is currently open through April, and then it will close. Sorry, but it'll reopen again, I'm sure. But we want to limit the first launch of this program to a small group of community members to really make it the best it can be. And then we're hoping to grow it from there. It's definitely awesome for music therapists because we're using music and movement interventions. But if you're listening and you're not a music therapist, you are also welcome. We want parents, we want other clinicians who don't ever or often use music in their sessions to help them facilitate that engagement through music. And you don't have to have musical skill to implement these things. A lot of the things we're going to do are instrument play based or chanting, or you can play the recorded song and it's on you to help support the individual in front of you. So I'm really excited for the launch of that. It has been years in the making, and there's just so much cool content coming out that way. So you can sign up at dynamiclynks.com/community, and it is a monthly subscription, so you can join, and if it's not your fancy, you can cancel at any time.
Woo!
Yay!
We'll make sure we have all of those in the show notes. So those Facebook groups sound awesome. I was like, those are new to me. They sound really interesting. So I'll definitely check that out too, and we'll make sure your community is also in the show notes. And I loved what you said about like listening to neurodivergent voices, and I've been fortunate to have some guests on the podcast that are those voices, so I'll link their episodes in the show notes too.
Yeah.
If people want to go and listen, especially more about neurodiversity, neuroaffirming. There's a whole episode on neuroqueering, so those I'll put in the show notes too, just to give people more resources.
Yeah, awesome. It's a hard thing to navigate as a clinician who wants to support these individuals, but I also don't identify as neurodivergent. So I want to be respectful of those voices should always be the loudest in this sphere. I'm just here to help you be the best clinician from my scope and my perspective. So first and foremost, always those things. So yeah, check out the show notes, go find those groups, listen to that episode.
Awesome. Thanks, Alyssa.
Yeah.
So is there anything else that you want to discuss or share with us today as we kind of start wrapping up?
I'm sure I could talk for hours. I think my main thing would just be the top takeaways from this to first and foremost, listen to neurodivergent, autistic, and disabled voices. Secondly, presume competence, give time and space. And thirdly, navigate your levels of prompting so you're giving the right amount of support and not promoting learned helplessness. I think those are the main things we want to drive home today.
Ooh, I love it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yay.
Well, we'll put all of Dynamic Lynks, social media, email, where to find you guys. Otherwise, thanks for coming on today.
Yeah. Oh, I remembered one more thing, of course, as we're going to hit end. If you are thinking you need more support than just the community environment that does have a group supervision element, I do individual supervision as well for those who are looking to better support their clients. So you can follow me personally at alyssastone.co on Instagram. And I am taking one or two more individual supervision clients. I don't have a ton of space. So if you're interested, please reach out, and you can email me, alyssa@dynamiclynks.com as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Alyssa.
Thanks, Bonnie.
And now a word from our sponsor, Creative Remedies, LLC. Creative Remedies, LLC is a music therapy and mental health counseling private practice located in Aurora, Colorado, specializing in neurodiversity, mental health, and bereavement. They believe in providing services that address the concerns you have and also providing wellness and preventative therapeutic care. Creative Remedies offers individual and group music therapy services, music lessons, and mental health counseling services. They currently have open registration for Grief and Loss Music Therapy Group, which can be found on their website at www.creativeremediesllc.com. Creative Remedies is committed to making services accessible, so they provide sliding scale options for all financial situations. Contact them today at 720-780-0111 or at their website. Now, back to the episode. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Alyssa as much as I did. We both had a blast, and it was awesome to hear all the knowledge and information and perspectives that Alyssa had to share, and there are so many good takeaways. I first want to focus on the staff training that we discussed. I think Alyssa had a lot of really good practical advice for ways to help train staff or coach staff, model to staff different interactions, let staff at different facilities know how we kind of want music to go, what we're looking for in music, create it really collaboratively and on the same page. And with that training, we focused in on those neuroaffirming techniques and really respecting that neurodivergent individual in front of you. And under staff education, we also discussed providing space and time for prompts, presuming the competence of all of the individuals that we're working with, even if they're non-speaking, to really provide them with opportunities for success in music, to process between prompts, and using those neuroaffirming techniques. And just our discussion of prompting was very interesting, and I really enjoyed it as well too, and how we kind of discussed that some supports are kind of adaptations and that they're okay, and that everybody uses different alarms and reminders and supports in their lives. So it's kind of working with an individual to get to the level of independence that they want and the supports that they want and work towards that. And with prompting, like fading in some cases that is appropriate, and in other cases voices, maybe they need that prompt or want that prompt for independence as well too. So it's not as much focus on the prompt, but on the individual and what they're looking for their level of independence. And I think just using really intentional prompting is a great takeaway from this conversation of, are we prompting too often? Are we over prompting, or are we not prompting enough? Are we allowing enough time between prompts? Are we letting other people, such as staff in the room, know what kind of prompting we're wanting to offer and support for individuals, and how can we help communicate that to people so that we can avoid learned helplessness where we're doing a task for an individual but still provide the prompts and supports and adaptations that they need while respecting them. And then her final takeaways were great as well too. I echo listening to autistic voices, and we'll put the information Alyssa gave us in the show notes. Like I said, please check out her dynamic community. Alyssa and her team are putting together some really cool resources for working with adults and with other ages as well too, kids and teens. They put a lot of really good work into everything they do, and if you're looking for that community and that resource, definitely worth checking out. I believe you have 1 week from when this episode goes public before they close it for a little while, and they'll open it again eventually, but please check out that dynamic community in the show notes. All right, to wrap up the session, I usually go over a session plan, but since this is the second podcast episode of this month for Autism Acceptance Month, there's no session plan outlined today. The breakdown of the April outline is on patreon.com/navigating adulthood and IDD for $5 a month for all patrons of the podcast, who get access to all my breakdowns once a month, as well as visuals, lead sheets that go along with the plans as well. And workshops are available for patrons too, including technology and music therapy for adults with IDD, which is available for 2 more days after this podcast comes out. After the 27th, it will no longer be available, but it is available to patrons and for those who become a Patreon before the 27th. So I would love to have you there in our small community. We also have a Facebook group that's connected with it as well too, and we meet once a month on Zoom. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, check us out at patreon.com/navigating adulthood and IDD. Other ways to help the podcast include sharing it with someone you think would enjoy it, rating us on iTunes, and continuing to listen. If you ever want to be on the podcast, feel free to email me at bonnie@rhythmicrootsmusictherapy.org, and I would love to have a conversation with you. Thanks again for listening to this amazing conversation with Alyssa Stone. I hope that you find something to take directly into your practice and make it neuroaffirming, and celebrate neurodiversity in your practice with your adults with disability, whether they have autism, whether they are neurodivergent, whether they have ADHD, and that we can celebrate that neurodiversity together. We'll catch you next time. Thanks for listening. This podcast is by Rhythmic Roots Music Services, LLC, with content and music by Bonnie Haupt. Transcriptions are made by my favorite little sister, Emma Haupt. Thanks for listening.